Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to another book recommendation video. And today, as you can tell by the title, we're going to do some pegging recommendations. This one kind of fits in between the slots of oddly specific recommendations, you know, toy recommendations, as well as maybe taboo. I don't feel like this is taboo, but I think a lot of authors do. Also, you know, a lot of authors writing romance, they're usually writing more dominant men, they're writing hetero romance, and you're not seeing a lot of pegging just show up in that, you know, doesn't just appear in there. But it is something that I enjoy reading, whether it is the heroine is a dom or whether it's just something they want to have in their relationship. I think often it is associated with the heroine being a dom because it's a form of submission for the hero to let the heroine peg him. And I don't quite know how I feel about all the stigmas or the thoughts that go around it, but that's not what we're here right now. We're not going to worry about the whys or the what's-its. I'm going to give you some recommendations of ones that I've read and liked. Probably some that you've seen recommended on every video, or, you know, maybe you haven't seen a video for this, because that's the thing. I haven't seen many about this. And then like I have done and will do when I have an oddly specific, you know, rec, I also am going to read the blurbs of some books that Goodreads tells me have pegging in them, but I haven't read them yet, and I've decided to put these on my TBR. And actually, you know, when you see my September TBR, which should be going out before I put this one out, you'll see that two of these books are actually already on that TBR. I already have them downloaded, and I want to read them. So we're going to go ahead and get into these. When I do these rec videos, I try not to have them be too long, and I won't go in as deep of detail into the story or not. But most all of these books I've given a 4 or higher to. There's only one of these books, and it's actually the first one I'm going to mention that I gave less than a 4-star, and part of that's my fault, and we'll get into that. So the first book we're going to talk about, in a book I actually read in preparation for this video, because I wanted to get a couple more recommendations that I could give for books I have read, and that one's going to be Wed to a Wild God by Ruby Dixon. And I have another caveat for this one in a second. So this one I actually gave 3.5 stars, and I reviewed it on my last weekly wrap up, and I had a few of y'all tell me that this book was one that shouldn't have been read out of order. You know, there are lots of books and series where you can jump into them wherever you want. You know, it doesn't matter so much where you start. And this is one that I think it probably did matter, because this was in her Aspects and Anchor series, and there was a lot that I was confused about. I also just think this book was way too long, and I was a bit confused. And to make matters, like I said, a little bit worse, the pegging in this video, or in this book, was in the epilogue, but it was a very good pegging scene. And this is one where, like, the hero isn't like a submissive, there isn't like a dynamic going. He is the god of, like, he is hedonism. That's like what he is. And so any kind of like getting sexy, anything that's gonna get both of them an orgasm, like, he's willing to do it. And even the heroine is like surprised he's letting her do this, and he's like, why? Like, it's gonna give us both a lot of pleasure, like, let's do it. And I love that, because I love that there didn't have to necessarily be a power dynamic going on for them to do this. And there is a couple other ones that I'll be able to recommend that aren't that don't necessarily have BDSM involved in them doing it. It's just two partners enjoying some sexy time together, and a man knowing that that's gonna feel real good on my prostate. And I like reading about that. So, though I had other issues with the book itself, the pegging was A+. All right, now let's get into some like I said, ones you probably know about. We have a couple by Katie Robert, who hasn't shied away from this. We have 2 books from her Wicked Villain series that I very much enjoy. I liked 5 out of the 6 books in that series very much. There was only one that I was kind of like, meh. And so, Learn My Lesson. This is the Hades, Meg, and Hercules one. This is book 2. And this one is Meg and Hades have been in a long-term relationship with each other. And the underworld is his sex club. The underworld is where a lot of these books take place because they go to get kinky at his place. And Hercules, this sweet, eager young man, kind of gets drawn into this game between Meg and Hades, but he ends up liking it just fine. And there is a wonderful scene where like Meg and Hades like top Hercules together. So there's scenes in this of there's definite sword crossing here, absolutely, and it's delicious. There's a scene where Hades fucks Hercules, but there's also a scene where Meg fucks Hercules, and it's divine. It's fantastic. Absolutely adore it. Yeah, I just love this. And then the other one in the series that has it is The Sea Witch, and this one is another FFM. Sorry, that one was an MMF. This one is an FFM. This one is Ursa, the Sea Witch, and then Zuriel and Alric. Is it Alric or Eric? I always mess it up. Let me see. Alaric. Sorry. And this one is Zuriel and Alaric. They, like, Alaric is kind of used by Ursa to fuck with Zuriel to get back at her father type of thing. And she ends up kind of in a game with them. But Ursa is actually the dom in this, and her and Alaric have been together for a while, and she kind of uses him, right, to get at Zuriel, but both of them really do like Ursa. And there ends up being some like hate fucking between Alaric and Zuriel at different points, but there is a scene where Ursa uses her tentacle dildos on and strap on Alaric, and it's really good. And something I really loved about this, because this was my first FFM that I ever read, and since then I've read a few more, and most of them by Katie Robert actually, but I really loved this one because I loved seeing where like Ursa obviously enjoys being a dom and she likes being the one responsible for her subs, but she also sometimes needs them to be able to give her aftercare and give back to her, because it can be exhausting to be the one in charge all the time. And I like that. Like, no one should have to be in a dynamic all the time. I mean, again, unless they want to, but people need time out from BDSM, you know? It's a very emotionally draining thing, and I think that there's one thing Katie Robert, in my opinion, has always been good at. It's showing like the emotional and physical toll that BDSM can take, and then, you know, when you need a break and when you need the aftercare, like, I think she does that so well. I really do. So I really like this one. All right, then we, of course, and this is one that will always come up, but I'm putting all of my recs in one place. And this one, of course, is Zenny by Rebecca Weatherspoon. I remember when this came out, just how excited that everyone was. And this is another one where I'll say that the pegging is just, it's a part of the pleasure they're giving each other. And the hero, what's his name? Mason. These two end up in an arranged marriage, and both of them are actually bisexual. Rebecca Weatherspoon does that a lot. She just makes everybody bisexual, and I love it. And they're in this, and they decide to enjoy some sexy times together. And like, Mason straight up like asks if she would be willing to peg him, and she's like, yes, I would. Let's do it. And so that, you know, it didn't have to do anything with a power dynamic. It was what's going to bring them both the most pleasure. And also, he is like a husky hero too. So like, oh my gosh, this book has so much. Rebecca Weatherspoon does an amazing job with that. And I have another rec of hers to share right after this one, where oh, she just makes the sex, like the communication, the consent, it's sexy, it's hot, it's a little bit like, it gets you a little bit squirmy because they're like, this is like awkward, but we're going with it and it's still sexy. Like, I just love it. And yeah, I liked it a lot. And the other book by her I wanted to recommend is Sanctuary. So this is book 2 in the Beards and Bondage series. All 3 of these have BDSM in them. This one has a female dominant, and she ends up being in trouble because she's being targeted by a former client. She's a lawyer. Her name is Liz. And so one of her friends offers for her to stay at his family farm and use it as a safe house. And his brother Silas lives there. And now Silas is a bit on the spectrum, and you'll see that if you read it, that he's not really great like communicating with people, so he comes off as very grumpy and gruff. And our heroine is just trying to stay alive, and she's like, I don't want to deal with this guy. But they're both very attracted to each other, and she has this way of like commanding him, and it's getting him really hot. And they decide while she's staying there that they're going to pleasure each other. And she's like, the way that I go about it though is I need to be in control. And she isn't sure what he's going to feel about that. She's like, I need to be in control of everything. And he's like, that's getting me pretty hot. I'm into it. So we eventually work up to a place where she is fucking him, and it's great. But there are a lot of like other, like there's an edging scene in here that is so good. I love it. Love it. Okay, then we of course have to talk about one of my favorite badass women, who is also a pretty broken lady, right? We have Deliver, which is the first book in the Deliver series by Pam Godwin. And the first book, which has a really creepy cover. So we're going to go with this one in like the omnibus that I have here. And this whole series is about sex trafficking. So just know that. And when we start it, we don't have the full picture of like where the series is going to go about sex trafficking. We are just with Josh, who is a young college guy. He's a virgin. He is going to school to be a pastor. He's a football star, and he has been targeted by Liv and Van, whose job it is to find specific young slaves or potential slaves that they're able to break and train into being a perfect submissive, a perfect slave for who they will be sold to. And so Liv is supposed to find a virgin who fits all these certain criteria and then kidnap and break him. And Liv is the one put in charge of this. And so we see Liv as she does some pretty horrible things to Josh to tame him, and one of them includes fucking him with her strap on. But Josh, oh Josh, guys, he will melt you into a puddle because he can see that there's something else going on here, and no matter what gets done to him, even though he's angry, of course, he does this amazing thing of not being angry at Liv and being willing to offer forgiveness all the time. I don't want to spoil the whole thing. This is one of the darkest series that I've ever read, and also one of the most beautiful, and I love it. It has my heart and my soul and all the things. So, very good. If you want your pegging with the side of darkness, that's the one for you. All right. Then we also have Breaking Out by Samantha Whalen. I actually had to message my friend Esty, who after I read this book, she actually gifted me this and some other books by Samantha Whalen, which, since I was digging this book up to put in this, I actually put Samantha Whalen on my TBR for September as well, because I'm like, these beautiful books are just sitting here. So this one is an MMF, and it has a very interesting like dynamic how it gets set up, because we have Maddie, and she works for Reese, and they have been friends, and you know, she has worked with him for a while. And this book begins with this interesting situation where she actually, like, I believe she's like at his house and it's being like burgled, and he has a safe house at his house, and so she's able to get into the safe house, and he is on his way to her to, you know, save her before anything happens. And it kind of like shocks them both about like they don't want to take another day for granted, because they've had this chemistry between them, but they're friends and they work together, and they didn't want to mess with that dynamic, so they've stayed away from it. And it's like, you know what if we don't get tomorrow? We will regret not doing something. So that kind of moves them forward. Then, though, we enter David, who spent 10 years in the Boston PD before realizing he wanted to change. And so he's in the personal protection business. So this is kind of then a bodyguard scenario. So he gets hired to look after Reese and Maddie, or assigned to them, one or the other. And they both Reese and Maddie find David very attractive. And for Reese, it doesn't seem like, I can't quite remember, but I don't think he's ever been with a man before. But like both Maddie and Reese are attracted to David, and they start kind of like, all of them kind of start pursuing each other. It's hard to explain. But Maddie actually has a little bit of experience in the more naughtier sexy times, and she actually brings like toys into the relationship, and there is a scene of her pegging one of the men as well. And it's cool because she kind of starts like arranging the scene and being the one in charge, and she's ready to fuck one of them, and it's delightful. Love it. Then I have two more to rec that I have actually read, and then we'll get into the ones that I haven't. So one that I feel obliged to mention, because people are going to mention it if I don't, but I personally was extremely irritated of how it went down, and I'll tell you. More irritated than I was by Wed to a Wild God, with it being in the epilogue, okay? So All the Feels by Olivia Dade, all right? I liked this book. Olivia Dade, she has an interesting way of writing, and her books, like, equally, I like them and am confused by them. So in this one, this book has what is called the peg that was promised, because there's like fanfic having to do with this, and our hero like writes fanfic about his character on a TV show getting pegged, and he is actually interested in pegging. And our heroine, Ren, it's Ren, right? It's Lauren. Yeah, nickname Ren. Yep. And like, it was in a bonus scene that you had to like get the pre-order thing for, and now I think it's available on her website. And it's one of the reasons why traditionally published books just like piss me off, because it's like, you've literally been teasing that this man would be interested in being pegged since the book before, and then it wasn't in the book. You had to have pre-ordered to get it. And I'm like, I can't help but think, Avon, that had to do with you not wanting to alienate anyone, I don't know, by not having it in there. And it's just, I don't know, it just pissed me off. So I know I'm wrecking this and I'm mentioning it, and yes, if you read this and love it and you didn't know about that scene, you can go to her website and get it, because I did enjoy this book. Like, I liked this book. I was just pissed that the peg that was promised was a pre-order reward, and like it wasn't worked into their romance, and it totally should have been. So Avon, do better. Give us what we want. People can handle the pegging in a book, okay? They can, I promise. They'll be all right. People can normalize sex toys because they're great. Okay, all right, and then the last one that I've read, and which will be out when you're seeing this video, is of course Mercy by Sarah Kate. And this is the book that inspired me to make this rec video, because I was like, there better be pegging in this. Female dom, male sub, older woman, younger man. It is the perfect dynamic for pegging to exist. It is one of, like I said, it is treated as a very high level of submission for a specifically like a straight man to let his woman peg him, you know. And granted, there are a whole bunch of strings that come with why that's a big deal, but I mean, it's just a fact that not all straight men are going to be like, yeah, put something up my butt, you know. They're just not, they don't think about it or be willing to try it, you know. But being with a partner who you fully trust, who's like, let's do this, it's going to be great for both of us, I love. So this book, of course, this is a best friend's son. This is an older woman. Neither of them have been really in BDSM before, even though the heroine's been around it because she actually owns a sex club, so she's seen it, but she doesn't think she'd be into it. And then she fills out a quiz and gets paired with her friend's son. And they begin a BDSM relationship where he's a brat and she's his dom. And there are other things put in his butt at different times, including a scene of her torturing him with something up his butt, making him come constantly. It was beautiful. I loved it. But there was a pegging scene in here, and it was fantastic. Okay? It was great. So look forward to that with Mercy. Like, it was marvelous, and I can't wait to see what else Kate does in this world, possibly. She said she might. We'll see. All right, now we're going to get on to the ones that I'm interested in trying. And also, I would absolutely love if you've read some pegging books that I haven't mentioned and tell me which ones I should read. So the first one on here that I have actually bought because I want to read it is Deacon by Kristen Ashley. This one says it's book 4 in the Unfinished Heroes. And this one, it told me that there was pegging in it. So if you've read this and this is true or false, so that's the other thing about these, because it's what Goodreads said, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is. So if you can confirm or deny, that would be wonderful, okay? But I have 4 recommendations based on what Goodreads said. So Deacon, it says, Deacon has an ugly history, a history that broke him, leaving him a ghost of a man. Out of necessity, he left the normal world to descend into the criminal world and found he fit there. So he stayed. Cold as ice and living off the grid, Deacon has no intention to connect, not with anyone. Then he returns to some remote cabins in the Colorado mountains to find they have new owners, and one of them is Cassidy Swallows, a young woman willing to work hard to live her quiet dream in a house by a river surrounded by aspen and pine. Suddenly, Deacon finds he's at war. Cassidy's pull for him to connect is strong. He fights it, but he loses, always coming back for more. But when he does, he gives her nothing. From the first time she sees him, Cassidy knows Deacon is dead inside. She knows he's the kind of man who could destroy a woman. But one night when Deacon's control slips, Cassidy takes the chance. He might break her. He might also be her dream come true. So there's that one. Then there is Something Borrowed by Eve Dangerfield. And this one I've had on my TBR for ages. So I definitely want to try this one. Like, I literally own it already. I own a copy in my Kindle, so I'm going to read this one. So this one says, Elle Sahlstrom and Jackson Prevost are enemies, adversaries, morally and ethically opposed to each other. At least Elle thinks so. Jackson would quite like to kiss her again. Trapped on a plane on their way to the same destination wedding in Bali, Elle and Jackson agree to be civil for the sake of their engaged friends. A now reformed playboy, Jackson hopes the holiday will convince Elle he's atoned for his sins and he really can be the man of her dreams. Unfortunately, Elle just wants to get drunk on free wine and ignore the fact that no guy has ever done it for her like her bossy, pretentious, stupidly hot enemy. Interesting. Alrighty. Then there is American Sweethearts by Adriana Herrera. This one I'm pretty sure has the pegging in it because I read some of the reviews and they said so. So this one says, Juan Paulo Campos doesn't do regrets. He's living the dream as a physical therapist with his beloved New York Yankees. He has the best friends and family in all the world and simply no time to dwell on what could have been. Except when it comes to Priscilla, the childhood friend he's loved for what feels like forever. New York City Police Detective Priscilla Gutierrez has never been afraid to go after what she wants. Second-guessing herself isn't a thing she does. But lately, the once clear vision she had of herself, her career, her relationships, her life, is no longer what she wants. What she especially doesn't want is to be stuck on a private jet to the Dominican Republic with Juanpa, the one person who knows her better than anyone else. By the end of a single week in paradise, the love-hate thing Wampa and Pris have been doing for 16 years has risen to epic proportions. No one can argue their connection is still there, and they both finally admit, if only to themselves, they've always been a perfect match. The future they dreamed of together is still within reach if they can just accept each other as they are. Okay, so this one sounds like a second chance romance. Interesting. Alrighty, and then the last one is Pink Slip by Katrina Jackson. And this is one I've had my eye on multiple times too, because this one is a menage one. So, very interested in that. This one says, Kiara was a poor poet looking for a job while she worked toward her dream of becoming a published poet. One day, she accidentally becomes the personal assistant to married spies. For the last 3 years, she's lusted after them, not very secretly, until finally she decides it's time to move on with her life and give her notice. During her last week of work, her bosses whisk her away to Serbia for a top-secret mission that only she can help them complete. And in the middle of dispatching a European dictator, Kiara and her bosses give in to their deepest desires. Pink Slip is the first in an erotic suspense spy comedy series that wonders what James Bond receptionist's life might have been like if James Bond had a wife and they both wanted to shag the receptionist, but the dirty American version of that and all of the possible entanglements between them. So this is like a series about this family? Or no, maybe it's not. Okay. Either way. Alrighty. So yeah, so those are the recommendations and then the books that Goodreads told me I should try and I'm recommending to you. So again, give me a confirm or deny with those. Let me know. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this. Make sure you're subscribed and you like this video so that, you know, the YouTube gods will smile on me and boost my video for other people. Because who doesn't need some pegging recommendations in their life, okay? Who doesn't need them? All right. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and I'll see you next time, okay? Bye.